He usually walked through the small park near his house in the late afternoon, just as the sun started to dip behind the trees. The park was quiet at that time, with only a few people around. He liked this hour because it gave him time to think and clear his mind after the busy day at work. That afternoon, something caught his attention. There was an elderly man sitting on a worn wooden bench near the fountain, struggling with a heavy bag beside him. He looked like he had been carrying it for a long time and was having trouble lifting it. Something inside him urged him to approach. He walked slowly toward the bench, careful not to startle the man. "Excuse me, sir, can I help you with that bag?" he asked gently. The man looked up, his eyes tired but sharp, and hesitated for a moment. Then he nodded slowly. "I suppose that would be nice," the old man said with a quiet, almost shy smile. He picked up the bag and carried it a short distance to the bench, placing it carefully on the ground. The man patted the space next to him, inviting him to sit. "Thank you," he said, his voice calm but tinged with weariness. "It's been a long day and I've been trying to manage on my own." They sat quietly for a few moments, watching the water in the fountain sparkle in the late afternoon sun. The park felt peaceful, yet there was an unspoken weight in the air, as if the old man carried not just the bag but memories that were heavy to hold alone. After a while, he asked gently, "Do you come here often?" The old man smiled faintly. "Every day for as long as I can remember. I like the quiet. I like to watch people pass by, hear the birds, and remember things from long ago. But lately it's been harder to manage." He nodded, understanding more than he could explain. There was something in the way the old man spoke, a depth of life experience that drew him in. "I can come by and help you if you like," he offered. The old man's eyes softened and he gave a small nod. "I would like that," he said. "It is nice to have someone to talk to, even if only for a short while." From that day on, he found himself walking through the park at the same time almost every afternoon. Sometimes he brought lunch or a bottle of water. Sometimes he just sat beside the old man and listened. The man's stories started slowly at first, simple memories of his home, his family, and his youth. But gradually they became richer, filled with vivid recollections of a life shaped by experiences many people today could only imagine. One afternoon, the old man pulled a small worn notebook from his coat pocket. "I have written some things down," he said, handing it over. The pages were yellowed, the ink faded, but the words were full of life. Stories of friends, letters, and small acts of courage filled the pages. He could see the pride and love with which the man had preserved these memories. Each story painted a picture of a time long gone, a time of struggle, bravery, and connection. As he read, he noticed familiar names, dates, and places. Something stirred inside him, a feeling he could not explain at first. The details seemed strangely close to his own family's past, though he had never known much about it. The old man noticed the change in his expression and smiled faintly. "You remind me of someone," he said. "Perhaps your grandfather?" He froze, the notebook trembling slightly in his hands. His grandfather had passed away when he was very young, and he had only heard bits and pieces of his life from old family stories. Could this man have known him? He asked quietly, "Did you know my grandfather?" The old man's eyes twinkled with recognition. "Yes, I did," he said slowly. "We served together a long time ago. He was a good man, brave, honest, always thinking of others before himself. We shared many things that I have never told anyone else. But you remind me of him in your eyes, your way of listening, your patience. You have his spirit." He felt a wave of emotion, a connection he had never felt before. The old man began to tell small stories, not just of battles or events, but of his grandfather's character, his kindness, and quiet acts of courage. He learned about friendships forged in difficult times, about moments of fear and laughter, about letters sent home and small gestures that revealed a man's true heart. Each day, their conversations grew longer and deeper. He discovered details about his grandfather's life that were never spoken of at home. He learned how his grandfather had helped comrades in moments of danger, how he had quietly supported those who struggled, and how he had left a mark on the lives of everyone around him. The old man's voice carried a weight of experience but also warmth as he shared these memories. Listening felt like stepping into a world that had existed before him, a world where courage and kindness had been tested in ways he could hardly imagine. The park became more than a place for him. It became a bridge to the past. He began to notice small things in the old man's stories that reminded him of family tales. Sometimes the man laughed softly at a memory. Sometimes he grew quiet, lost in thought. Each reaction brought a new layer of understanding, a new depth to the history he thought he knew. He realized that by helping the old man, he was uncovering a connection to his grandfather that had been hidden for decades. One day, the old man asked him about his own life. They talked about family, work, and dreams. He shared pieces of himself he hadn't shared with anyone else. The old man listened carefully, nodding and offering wisdom from a lifetime of experience. It became clear that this simple act of kindness, offering help to someone struggling, was opening a door to a world of stories, emotions, and discoveries that neither of them had expected. As the sun set over the park, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, he felt a deep sense of gratitude. What began as a small gesture, simply helping an elderly man carry a bag, had turned into a journey of connection, discovery, and understanding. The old man's stories were more than memories. They were pieces of a life that had shaped the present in ways he was only beginning to grasp. And in helping him, he had found a bridge to his own past, to the grandfather he had never fully known, and to a deeper understanding of family, history, and the power of simple acts of kindness. From that moment, he knew that each visit to the park was not just about helping an old man, but about listening, learning, and honoring a legacy that had been waiting patiently to be discovered. The bench by the fountain became a place of stories, laughter, and quiet reflection, a place where the past and present met, and where the bonds of family and friendship grew stronger with each passing day. It was the start of a journey he could never have imagined, a journey that would change his life and connect him to a history he had only glimpsed before. He returned to the park the next day, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. The old man was already there, sitting on the same worn bench, watching the ducks in the pond. When he saw him, his eyes lit up with recognition and he waved him over. Carrying a small bottle of water and a sandwich, he approached and placed them beside the old man. The man smiled gratefully, taking the sandwich and offering a small nod of thanks. They sat together in silence for a few moments, listening to the gentle sounds of the park, the rustling leaves, the soft quacking of the ducks, and the distant laughter of children playing. The old man finally spoke, his voice calm and thoughtful.
Yesterday you reminded me so much of my old friend.
I hadn't thought about those days in a long time. It is strange how someone can appear and make the past feel alive again. He nodded, unsure of what to say. He had begun to realize that these visits were not just about helping the old man physically, but about listening, understanding, and sharing a connection that had lain dormant for decades. Over the next few weeks, their meetings became a routine. Each day the old man shared a story or memory, some small and personal, others filled with moments of bravery and struggle. One day he spoke of a letter he had received during his time in service, a letter from a family member that reminded him of the warmth and support waiting at home. The old man explained how small acts, like letters or simple gestures, could give hope and strength even in the most difficult moments. He listened carefully, fascinated by the way the old man described emotions, camaraderie, and life in a time he had never known. There was a depth in these stories, an honesty that made him feel as if he was stepping into the past. He asked questions about his grandfather, trying to piece together the life of a man he had only heard stories about at home. Each answer from the old man added new layers, filling gaps and connecting dots he hadn't realized existed. The old man pulled out an old photograph one afternoon. The edges were frayed, the image slightly faded, but it showed a group of soldiers in uniform smiling and standing close together. He looked at it with careful attention, tracing the faces with his eyes. The old man pointed to one of them. "That's your grandfather. See how he stands in the middle, always looking out for everyone else." He was a quiet man, but strong. You could trust him with anything. He felt a lump in his throat. Seeing his grandfather in that moment, through the eyes of someone who had known him so well, was overwhelming. There were no exaggerations here, no stories told for attention. These were memories held close for decades, shared only because he had shown genuine care and respect. As they continued talking, he learned about small acts of kindness his grandfather had performed during his service, how he had helped a wounded comrade, how he had quietly supported others through fear and uncertainty, and how he had preserved the dignity of everyone around him. The old man spoke with reverence and clarity, describing moments that had shaped his grandfather into the man he had been. It was clear that these memories were not just stories, but lessons about life, courage, and humanity. One afternoon, the old man recounted a difficult time during a mission when things had gone wrong and the outcome had seemed hopeless. He described how his grandfather had remained calm, offering words of encouragement and guidance to those around him. He had a way of making people believe they could overcome anything, the old man said. Even when I doubted myself, he reminded me what we were fighting for. And he never asked for recognition. He only cared about others. He was fascinated and humbled. Each story brought him closer to understanding his grandfather, not as a distant figure in family photographs or vague memories, but as a real person with emotions, challenges, and values that still resonated today. It made him think about the stories his own life would leave behind and the ways small acts of kindness could ripple through time. As the days passed, he also noticed that the old man was becoming more comfortable sharing details about his own life. He spoke about his family, the friends he had lost, and the moments that had defined him. Listening to these stories, he realized that the old man had lived a full life, marked by both hardship and joy. There was wisdom in his words, a perspective shaped by years of experience and reflection. He began to take notes, not in a formal way, but to remember the details, the names, the dates, and the feelings behind each story. He wanted to preserve these memories not just for himself, but for his family and for future generations. He realized that by helping the old man, he was becoming a guardian of a history that might otherwise have been forgotten. And in return, the old man found companionship, someone to listen without judgment, someone who valued his life experiences. One day they sat quietly as the sun dipped lower in the sky. The old man handed him a small leather-bound book. "I kept this for years," he said. "It is not much, but it holds the memories that mattered most. Your grandfather is part of these pages, and now so are you. I hope you will keep it safe and remember the lessons within." He held the book carefully, feeling the weight of the stories it contained. It was more than just paper and ink. It was a bridge to the past, a connection to his grandfather, and a testament to the power of human kindness. He thanked the old man, feeling a mixture of gratitude and awe. He realized that helping someone was not always about grand gestures. Sometimes it was about presence, patience, and genuine interest in another person's life. As he left the park that evening, he thought about the journey that had begun with a simple act of carrying a bag. It had opened a door to a world of memories, lessons, and connections that he could never have imagined. He knew that each visit would bring new stories, new discoveries, and a deeper understanding of the man who had shaped his family's history. The old man waved goodbye, a smile on his face, and he felt a sense of purpose he hadn't expected. Their bond had grown quickly, built on respect, empathy, and shared humanity. And as he walked home, he carried with him not just the old man's stories, but a growing awareness of how small acts of care could transform lives, connect generations, and bring the past into the present in ways that were meaningful and lasting. He arrived at the park that afternoon with a quiet anticipation, carrying nothing but himself and a notepad tucked into his coat. The old man was already seated on the familiar bench, staring at the fountain, lost in thought. When he saw him, his face brightened with recognition. He waved him over, and they greeted each other with a warmth that had grown over weeks of shared time. After a few minutes of comfortable silence, the old man turned to him with a small, knowing smile. "You are curious about your grandfather, aren't you?" he asked gently. He nodded, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. This was the moment he had been waiting for. The old man's gaze softened as he continued. "He was more than just a family member. He was someone I respected deeply, someone who made every day meaningful for those around him." The old man began to tell stories that were more detailed than anything he had heard before. He spoke about the regiment, the missions, the quiet moments before dawn when soldiers gathered and shared their thoughts. He described how his grandfather had a way of calming everyone, of making each person feel valued even when fear and uncertainty were all around. As he listened, he realized that these stories were not just about historical events. They were about character, about the essence of the man he had known only through family tales. One story stood out. The old man spoke about a night during a difficult mission when everything seemed lost. He described how his grandfather had led the group through darkness, making careful decisions that saved lives.
"He didn't boast, didn't seek recognition," the old man said, his voice quiet but firm.
"He simply did what needed to be done because it was right. That is who he was. He felt a surge of pride and emotion, hearing about his grandfather from someone who had witnessed his actions firsthand. Made the stories come alive in a way that photographs and letters never could. He asked questions about the soldiers, the places, and the events, eager to piece together the fuller picture of the life his grandfather had lived. The old man answered each question with patience, sometimes pausing to think, sometimes laughing softly at memories that were bittersweet. As the afternoon passed, he learned that his grandfather had not only been a brave soldier, but also a loyal friend. The old man shared moments of camaraderie, small acts of care among soldiers, and times when his grandfather had gone out of his way to support those around him. It was clear that the respect he had earned from his peers came not just from his skills but from his kindness and integrity. Each story revealed a new layer of a man who had been larger than life in ways he had never understood. The old man also described letters and messages exchanged during those years, letters that his grandfather had carefully preserved. Some were humorous, others deeply moving, and all of them reflected a life lived with purpose and compassion. He realized that these letters were more than words. They were a window into his grandfather's heart, showing the values and emotions that shaped his actions and decisions. One day, as they were sitting together, the old man handed him a small bundle of letters tied with a faded ribbon. "These belong to your grandfather," he said softly. "He trusted me with them, and now I trust you to carry them forward. They hold stories that should not be forgotten." He carefully untied the ribbon and handed the letters over. He felt the weight of history in his hands, the tangible connection to a past that was no longer distant. He spent hours reading the letters, absorbing the words, the tone, and the emotions. There were descriptions of daily life, reflections on fear and courage, and thoughts on friendship and loyalty. Each letter added depth to the stories the old man had told, creating a vivid picture of a man who had been deeply human, facing challenges with integrity and courage. As the days went by, he began to understand more about the old man himself. Through the stories of his grandfather, he saw the friendship, respect, and shared experiences that had shaped both their lives. The old man had kept these memories alive, holding them close, and now he was entrusted with carrying them forward. It was a responsibility he felt keenly, and one that filled him with a sense of purpose. He also noticed the subtle ways in which the old man's life had been shaped by his grandfather. The lessons he had learned, the values he had absorbed, and the moments of quiet strength were all reflections of a bond that had endured time and distance. Listening to these stories made him realize that the past was not gone. It lived on in the memories, actions, and hearts of those who remembered. One afternoon, the old man spoke of a photograph he had kept hidden for many years. It showed his grandfather standing with other soldiers, their faces weary but proud. He described each person in the photo, recalling details about their personalities and actions that were forgotten by most. Looking at the photograph through the old man's eyes, he could see his grandfather not just as a relative, but as a man who had left a lasting impact on those around him. The old man shared more personal stories, moments of laughter, small acts of bravery, and times when fear was met with calm determination. Each story was a lesson, a reflection of character, and a glimpse into the humanity of his grandfather. He began to take careful notes, wanting to preserve these memories and share them with his family, ensuring that future generations would understand the man who had shaped their history. Through these conversations, he discovered not just the bravery and heroism of his grandfather, but also the quiet, everyday acts that revealed his true character. He learned about the friendships forged under pressure, the support offered to those in need, and the unwavering commitment to doing what was right. These lessons resonated deeply, showing him that heroism was not just about grand gestures but also about small, consistent acts of kindness and integrity. The old man also spoke about the challenges he had faced after the service, the difficulties of adjusting to civilian life, and the ways his grandfather had continued to influence him even after the war ended. He realized that their connection was not limited to the battlefield. It extended into the values, choices, and relationships that had shaped their lives. The old man's stories were a reminder that the past, though distant, continued to shape the present in meaningful ways. As the sun set over the park one evening, he felt a deep sense of connection and understanding. The bond between the old man and his grandfather, forged through shared experiences and mutual respect, had become a bridge for him to the past. He understood that he was not just a listener, He was now a part of a chain that preserved and honored these memories. Each story, each letter, and each photograph was a testament to a life lived with courage, compassion, and integrity. He left the park that evening with a heart full of gratitude and a mind buzzing with stories. The old man had opened a door to a past he had only glimpsed, and he had walked through it with reverence and care. He knew that the journey was far from over. There were still stories to uncover, lessons to learn, and connections to be made. But for the first time, he felt truly connected to his grandfather, understanding the man not just as a figure in family history, but as a living presence in the memories and experiences of those who had known him best. Through this process, he also realized the importance of compassion, patience, and genuine interest in others' lives. By helping the old man, he had discovered not only his grandfather's story but also a deeper understanding of human connection, the value of listening, and the power of preserving memories. Each day spent in the park, each story shared, and each memory recounted was a step toward honoring the past and keeping it alive for the future. He felt a growing sense of purpose as he continued visiting the park each day. Every meeting with the old man was a chance to uncover more about his grandfather, to hear stories that were never spoken aloud at home. The old man had started to trust him completely, sharing details of battles, friendships, and personal moments that had shaped his grandfather's life. Each story brought the past to life, revealing a man full of courage, integrity, and quiet strength. One afternoon, the old man pulled a small, worn notebook from his coat pocket. "I have written these down over the years," he said. "They are not just memories of your grandfather, but of all the people he touched. I want you to have them." He carefully handed the notebook over. The pages were filled with dates, names, and events, along with notes about the people involved, their character, and the choices they had made. As he flipped through the pages, he realized the depth of the history preserved within them. He began to document everything carefully. He recorded the old man's stories, took photographs of letters and medals, and wrote down details about events that had never been mentioned before. Each day, he added more to the collection, capturing not just the facts but the emotions behind them. He realized that this was not simply about history. It was about understanding a person fully, seeing their humanity in every action and choice. The old man told him about the challenges faced during missions, the fear and uncertainty that came with every step, and the ways his grandfather had inspired others to keep moving forward. He spoke of acts of kindness, moments of courage, and the small gestures that made life bearable even in the darkest times. Listening to these stories, he felt a growing respect for his grandfather, seeing him not as a distant figure but as a man whose life had touched so many others. One day, the old man shared a story about a time when his grandfather had saved a fellow soldier during a dangerous mission. He described how calm and decisive his grandfather had been, thinking of others first and putting himself at risk without hesitation. The story was filled with tension and emotion, and he could almost see the scene unfolding in his mind. It was a powerful reminder that true courage often comes quietly, without recognition or fanfare. He also discovered letters that his grandfather had written to his family, filled with personal reflections and thoughts on life, duty, and love. Reading these letters, he felt a deep connection, as if he could hear his grandfather's voice across time. The words were simple yet filled with wisdom, showing a man who had faced challenges with grace and resilience. Each letter added depth to the stories the old man had told, painting a vivid picture of the life his grandfather had lived. The old man encouraged him to ask questions and explore further. Together they traced the history of his grandfather's regiment, looking at maps, photographs, and old documents. He learned about the places his grandfather had been, the people he had met, and the experiences that had shaped his character. Every discovery added a new layer to his understanding, revealing the complexities and richness of a life fully lived. He realized that this project was more than just learning about his grandfather. It was about preserving a legacy. He wanted to ensure that future generations would know the man behind the name, the values he held, and the impact he had on those around him. He began organizing the stories, letters, and photographs into a collection that could be shared, not just with his family, but with anyone who might find inspiration in them. The old man, seeing the care and dedication he brought to the task, became even more open. He shared personal anecdotes, moments of laughter, sorrow, and hope that had never been recorded. He spoke of friendships that had lasted a lifetime, of challenges overcome, and of the quiet satisfaction that comes from doing what is right. Each story was a piece of a larger puzzle, showing the humanity and character of his grandfather in vivid detail. He also began to reflect on his own life through these stories. The lessons he learned from his grandfather's experiences influenced the way he approached challenges, relationships, and decisions. He saw the importance of empathy, courage, and integrity, and understood that these qualities could shape lives in profound ways. The process of preserving his grandfather's legacy was teaching him about life itself. One evening, as they sat on the bench with the sun setting behind them, the old man handed him a small box. Inside were medals, ribbons, and photographs, each with a story attached. He carefully examined each item, feeling the weight of history and the connection to his grandfather. The old man explained the significance of each piece, sharing the context, the emotions, and the people involved. He realized that these artifacts were more than objects. They were symbols of a life lived with purpose, courage, and humanity. Together, they worked to create a detailed chronicle of his grandfather's life. He wrote down the stories, organized the letters and photographs, and compiled everything into a format that could be preserved for the future. The old man watched with pride, seeing his memories and experiences honored in a way that would last beyond their lifetimes. He felt a sense of accomplishment and connection, knowing that his grandfather's legacy would continue to inspire and guide others. As the days passed, the bond between them grew stronger. They shared laughter, reflection, and quiet moments of understanding. He realized that by helping the old man, he was also helping himself, learning about his family, history, and the values that shaped their lives. Each story, each letter, and each artifact was a reminder that the past was not gone, but lived on in memories, actions, and the hearts of those who remembered. He also began to share the stories with his family, reading letters aloud and showing photographs. They were amazed and moved, seeing their grandfather in a new light, understanding the man behind the family stories. The old man's wisdom and experiences brought the past to life, creating a bridge between generations that had been waiting to be discovered. Through this process, he realized that small acts of kindness and curiosity could lead to profound discoveries. By simply offering help to an old man in the park, he had uncovered a treasure of memories, lessons, and connections that would last a lifetime. The experience taught him the importance of listening, empathy, and respect, and the power of preserving the stories of those who came before. The old man smiled as he watched him carefully record each detail. "You have done more than I could have hoped," he said. "You have not only preserved these memories, but you have given them new life. Your grandfather would be proud, and so am I." He felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that their work together had created something meaningful and lasting. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the park, he packed up his notebook, letters, and photographs. The day had been filled with discovery, reflection, and connection. He felt a sense of gratitude for the old man, for the stories, and for the opportunity to honor his grandfather. He knew that their journey was far from over, but each step brought him closer to understanding the man he had been, the life he had lived, and the legacy he had left behind. Walking home that evening, he thought about the importance of memory and history, about the power of storytelling, and about the bonds that connect generations. He understood that by listening, learning, and preserving these stories, he was not only honoring his grandfather, but also creating a legacy of his own, one rooted in respect, compassion, and the recognition that every life, every story is worth remembering. The following week, he arrived at the park with a sense of quiet anticipation. Each visit had brought him closer to the past, to his grandfather, and to the old man who had become more than just a companion. That afternoon, the air was crisp, and the sun filtered through the trees, casting gentle shadows on the worn path. The old man was already there, sitting on the familiar bench, his eyes scanning the surroundings, calm but alert. He approached with a notebook in hand, filled with hours of notes, letters, photographs, and stories. The old man's eyes brightened when he saw it. "You have worked hard," he said, his voice filled with warmth. "These memories, these stories, they are alive again because of you." He felt a deep sense of pride and gratitude. Every moment spent with the old man had been a step into history, a bridge connecting him to a grandfather he had never fully known. They sat together, and he opened the notebook. Pages filled with letters, stories, and photographs reflected the journey they had taken together. The old man smiled, pointing out details in each photograph, recounting small moments that brought laughter or reflection. As he listened, he realized how rich and full his grandfather's life had been, not only in moments of bravery, but in quiet acts of kindness and integrity. The old man shared one last story, a memory of a time when his grandfather had helped a group of villagers during a difficult winter. He had organized food, offered warmth and support, and ensured that no one was left alone. The story was simple, yet it carried the weight of a life dedicated to helping others. It reminded him that heroism was not only about battles fought, but about compassion and selflessness. As the afternoon passed, he realized how much the old man had given him, not just stories, but a connection to his own history, a deeper understanding, a family and a model of courage and kindness to aspire to. He thanked the old man for trusting him, for sharing his memories, and for allowing him to become a part of this journey. The old man reached into his coat and pulled out a small, worn photograph of his grandfather. He handed it to him gently. "This belonged to him," he said. "It is a reminder of the man he was and the life he lived. Keep it close and remember that every act of kindness, every moment of courage, is part of the legacy he left behind." He held the photograph carefully, feeling the presence of his grandfather through the old man's words and the image before him. In the weeks that followed, he began sharing the stories with his family. They gathered together, reading letters aloud, looking at photographs and listening to the stories that had been preserved through the old man's memories. There were moments of laughter, moments of tears, and moments of quiet reflection. Each story brought them closer, connecting generations and creating a shared understanding of the values and character of the man they had known only through fragments of memory. He also began organizing the stories into a larger collection, a chronicle that could be shared with others. It was not just a record of his grandfather's life, but a testament to the power of listening, caring, and preserving memories. Each letter, each photograph, and each story carried lessons about courage, empathy, and integrity. He realized that the legacy they were creating was not only for his family, but for anyone who might find inspiration in these pages. The old man continued to visit the park, and their conversations shifted from the past to reflections on life, relationships, and the importance of kindness. He shared his own experiences, learning from the old man's wisdom and perspective. The bond between them had grown into a deep friendship, built on mutual respect, trust, and the shared journey of discovery. One evening, as the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the park, they sat quietly on the bench, looking at the fountain. The old man spoke softly. "You have done more than you realize. By helping me, by listening, by preserving these stories, you have honored your grandfather and all those who came before. You have kept the past alive." He felt a wave of emotion, realizing the truth in the old man's words. The journey had not only been about discovering history, but about creating a lasting impact on the present and future. He thought about how their journey had begun with a simple act of kindness, helping carry a heavy bag. It was amazing to see how one small gesture could lead to a connection that changed lives, uncovered history, and created a bridge between generations. He understood that every act of care, every moment of attention could have profound effects, shaping memories and legacies in ways that were sometimes invisible but deeply meaningful. Together, they reflected on the lessons learned from his grandfather's life. Courage, empathy, integrity, and selflessness were qualities that could guide them and inspire others. The stories they had preserved were more than memories. They were a roadmap for living a life of purpose and meaning. Each day spent together had been an opportunity to honor the past and apply those lessons in the present. The old man's health had begun to decline slightly, and he knew their time together was limited. This made the moments even more precious, each conversation and story more valuable. He dedicated himself to capturing everything, ensuring that nothing was lost and that the stories could continue to inspire even after the old man was gone. It was a responsibility he accepted with humility and gratitude. One afternoon, the old man handed him a small box, tied with a ribbon. Inside were medals, letters, and personal items that had belonged to his grandfather. "These are yours now," the old man said. "Keep them safe, and remember the life they represent. Your grandfather's legacy is in your hands." He carefully accepted the box, feeling the weight of history and responsibility. Each item carried a story, a lesson, and a connection that would continue to live through him. As they sat together, the old man shared his final thoughts. "Life is not measured by what we have, but by the impact we leave on others. Your grandfather lived with courage and kindness. By preserving his stories, you continue that legacy. You remind us all that the past matters, that the stories of those who came before us can guide and inspire us today." He felt the truth of the words deeply, understanding that their journey had not just been about history but about life, values, and human connection. He left the park that evening with a sense of fulfillment and gratitude. The journey had brought him closer to his grandfather, deepened his relationship with the old man, and given him a new understanding of life, courage, and legacy. He knew that the stories, letters, and photographs would continue to inspire his family and others, keeping the memory of his grandfather alive for generations to come. In the following months, he continued to document and share the stories, ensuring that every detail was preserved. He spoke to family members, friends, and community members, sharing the lessons learned and the wisdom discovered. The old man's life and his grandfather's legacy became intertwined, a testament to the power of kindness, listening, and preserving history. The park remained a special place, a symbol of connection, discovery, and shared history. He would return often, remembering the moments spent on the bench, the stories told, and the lessons learned. The simple act of helping an old man had opened a door to a world of memories, emotions, and understanding that would last a lifetime. He realized that life was full of these small, transformative moments, opportunities to connect, learn, and honor those who came before. By listening, caring, and preserving the stories of the past, he had created a bridge between generations, a legacy that would endure, and a deeper understanding of the power of human connection. And in doing so, he discovered that the simple act of helping another person could change everything, uncovering a world of stories, lessons, and love that would never be forgotten.